we're used to getting robbed.
Not having self-custody is just not an option.
The most hardcore self-custody you can think of is a brain wallet. Won't work for 99.99% of people. You hit your head, you lose it, you forget it.
Always comes down to having some sort of information, some sort of words that you have to keep for yourself and protect with your life, because there's your life energy in there.
If you're in a sinking ship, you don't want the ship to sink like this, because no one has time to get out, right? You want it to kind of sink slowly so that everyone has time to get into the lifeboats.
It's a crazy journey, Bitcoin. I think 2024 will be a really interesting year. And I think it will be really important also that everybody is holding their own keys. And I think you are one of the best persons to talk to with like self-custody, with Xellox. Do I pronounce Xellox right?
That's correct. It's
perfect.
Every name is pronounced how you pronounce it in your country, right?
Yeah, that's also right. Yeah. To start the episode off, I would say like let's start with why. Like, why is it so important to hold your own keys, especially in 2024 and moving forward?
Sure. Well, I really think it comes down to like the core ethos of Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin is a decentralized monetary system, decentralized database for money. Of course, people use it for other things as well, but mainly it's a decentralized database for money. And decentralization, like if we really like dive deep into that word, like what it means is, there's obviously no central point of failure, no central point of control, no central point of anything, basically. Everyone participates in the network as an individual. Obviously, there are levels to that. Like the purist Bitcoin utopia thinking is like, everyone go mine your own silicone, make your own chips, build your own hardware wallets, signing device, make the software yourself. But obviously that's not a reality. But decentralization more broadly, I would say, is, not putting or not giving a central authority even like the possibility of doing something fraudulent, because, well, the Bitcoin space knows better than I think any other space in finance, probably in the world, that trusting your assets with a custodian, with a central party, sooner or later something bad will happen. And that's not to say that you shouldn't ever use any centralized service for anything, but it's more like, if you can, why not, take self-custody, because this asset class allows for it, and it allows for it very easily, in contrast to, for example, cash or gold. Like, you don't want to take out all the money in your bank account and put it under your mattress, because that's not very convenient, right? You're basically shutting out like 90% of your life, or 99% of the modern conveniences, because no more internet shopping for you, because you're not going to be sending that cash through the mail. And with gold as well, such a big amount, so it's like, it's not convenient with other asset classes, but with Bitcoin it is. And you can really make it convenient, and you can make it fit your own security model, I would say.
Yeah, it's a crazy asset that we can have it in our brain and just walk around with it, and nobody can manipulate it. Nobody can stop you from using it. That's still one of the most mind-blowing facts about Bitcoin, that the importance of that just came to me while I was researching about Bitcoin. And then it bothers me so much when people are like, yeah, I bought Bitcoin and I have it on that exchange. I mean, there are a lot of things you can do in Bitcoin. Like, you can go the extreme route with completely no KYC, peer-to-peer. You maybe have cash, like physical cash, and then you buy from other peers Bitcoin in real life. Like, you can go to an extreme route, but not having self custody is just not an option at this point, I think. Even if you buy from some exchange, even if you buy from Coinbase or some big exchange where you have full KYC and stuff like that, take it at least to self custody. They know that you have the Bitcoin, but in an extreme case, they cannot take it from you. They can say, yeah, you have them, please give it out to us, but they have to force you to give it to you. Like, and I'm still bothered by this whole thing that they are not in fear that Bitcoin is on a centralized exchange, but they are in fear, and even some Bitcoiners are in fear to having their Bitcoin in self custody. What do you think will it take for the majority of people to take self custody and take that fear away and make it like an easy thing? And I think with Xellox also you have like 2 products that kind of work towards that future. Maybe you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, so like I said, that there are different levels to self-custody, right? So maybe like the most hardcore self-custody you can think of is a brain wallet, right? It's like very extreme, won't work for 99.99% of people because it's just not smart or convenient. You hit your head, you lose it, you forget it, like whatever happens, you get too drunk one night and you know wake up and you don't remember it. But it's like there are different levels to it. So really what you have to, or what everyone has to figure out is what is my level of self custody. Like if I'm an immigrant fleeing like an oppressive government through a border or whatever, you know, probably I wouldn't want to have my keys written down on anything or on me. That's probably when I would use a brain wallet. Um, but then again, if I live in the Western world, um, I have a home, I have a house, an apartment, whatever. Um, I don't have kids. You know, I'm alone. That's in that type of situation. You know, just having your keys written down, stored in your bank vault, or maybe doing like a Shamir backup where you split it in 3 different locations is actually very easy. Like if you think about stuff that you have like that anyways, like you know people have paintings that are worth a lot. People have you know their passports. I can't think of I've never lost my passport, for example, and I carry that around when I travel. So it's like assigning a certain like value and meaning to that like private key is very important. Obviously, that's the first step. The second step is how do you like store it the safest, and that's like I said up to each person themselves to decide. Like you know you might want to store it in a bank vault in your house, just one, just have your private key on one you know object, whether it's paper. We do a stainless steel backup, which is obviously more durable, but you can store it in on one object in one place if that's what you want. If you're not afraid of anyone you know coming in, knowing where it is, robbing you, if that's something you're afraid of, you might want to do like a Shamir thing. Or if you have kids you want to leave the Bitcoin to, you can do like a 2 out of 3 multi-sig type of solution where um, you have your seed split up on 3 different pieces of paper or metal or whatever you decide to use. And you might store one of them in your bank vault at home. Um, Obviously, no one can do anything with it. You can't move the funds with just that key. But then you could give, like, for example, a lawyer another key, another copy of the key, and tell the lawyer, like, if I pass away, give this to my kids with my, you know, testament, my estate. You could put one in a bank vault, for example, like if you're worried about losing it. Um, there are a bunch of things, or give friends or family. Like it's really the difficulty really comes from the fact that people need to start thinking for themselves, right? And that brings me to like the other end of the spectrum where you can still do like self custody but have sort of a kind of like a third party. You know, the ledger recover thing caused a lot of controversy in the Bitcoin space, which is understandable. It's mostly, I'd say, it's like a PR mistake from Ledger doing that. You know, not really reading the crowd, reading their customers, because currently people in self custody are like hardcore self custody maximalists, like me and you probably. But there's obviously going to be like a different level to it, right? And what I think is important is separating like self custody and cold storage. Like you can have your keys in cold storage, but it doesn't have to be self custodial. So that's like a very important like distinction to make, because self custody and cold storage have usually gone like hand in hand. They've been basically synonyms, but they're not really. If you think about it, like you could take your hardware wallet, take out the seed phrase, write it down on a piece of paper, and take the piece of paper to a bank vault. Right now, it's not self custodial. You let the bank take care of it, but you still have your keys in cold storage on the hardware wallets. So that's what I mean when I say that you have like different levels to it. And obviously at some point, services like Ledger Recover, similar services, um, will have users, because there are obviously people who are not gonna dive, you know, head first into self custody, into Bitcoin. Um, and those type of people, you know, they either do it on an exchange, or they use something like the Recover service. Me personally, I would never use anything like that, because I want to be in control. I want to set up my own system depending on my own situation. But for some people's situations, that might be the best solution, and that's what free markets are. That's like what it's all about. People bringing out different types of services, and competing with them, and
Yeah,
offering different solutions.
yeah, I think also that like I hope, and I can imagine it, but maybe I'm just too hopeful and too optimistic on the future. But I think key management is something that everybody has to learn, just as like how to write an email, how to set up a normal Google account. Like those things are now so normal for everybody, but just like 20, 30 years ago, you could not even do it. So like we are progressing, and I think there will be a lot of tech that is being developed in the space, and probably also keeps the ecosystem intact. Like they are like, for every person on every level, there are different kind of techs and different kind of security levels. As you said, when you go on out of a country that has an oppressive regime and has like war, maybe even, you don't want to have like one piece of paper where there's like one and the first word, and then there are all the 24 words, and maybe there's like Bitcoin wallet written on the top. Like make it really obvious, like just like destroy it, remember it, and then write it down when you're in the target country. Like this is still a risk do you take, because you can fall and hit your head and forget it, and your thing is also away. But it always comes down to securing some piece of information. Like even if you have like a Google account or a bank account where somebody hacks in, you have a username, you have a password. If someone comes in, they steal the money is gone anyway. So like it always comes down to having some sort of information, sort of words that you have to keep for yourself, and protect with your life, because there's your life energy in there. And I hope we come to the point where everybody does that. Maybe about you, like how did you find your way in Bitcoin, and why are you now so passionate that you even like found a company in the ecosystem?
Sure, it's a long journey. Like I think everyone has a long journey into Bitcoin. It's a bumpy road for sure, um, but it's worth it. So I'm this is what I usually say. I say I'm of the generation that doesn't really remember when they heard about Bitcoin for the first time. Um, I I know that the first time I really ran into Bitcoin was in 2013 when Russ Ulbricht got arrested. Um, I was watching the news, I think, or reading the newspaper, maybe both. But I ran into this Silk Road dark web thing, and I got really interested initially in the whole dark web, deep web thing. There's an internet the government can't control, like people selling all types of illegal stuff there, all kinds of crazy stuff going on. And I got very interested in it, and I just wanted to figure out what it was. So I learned how to you know get a Tor browser, how to find the marketplaces. Silk Road 2.0 popped up pretty much immediately after Silk Road 1.0 got shut down. And I found my way there, and I noticed that they were using this crazy internet money called Bitcoin to transact. This is a pretty typical story of people my age getting into Bitcoin through the dark web. But like I said, I was initially not too interested in Bitcoin itself. I was more interested in the dark web, in this kind of the thought of Bitcoin, like there's something on the internet that the government can't control, like governments can't control. Like this is like almost like a libertarian utopia, like a digital libertarian utopia that's on my computer or phone. And yeah, so I got really interested in that, and I started sort of nerding out about technology in general, and about these like freedom technologies more broadly. Um, then like the final nail in the coffin, I'd say, like when I truly got Bitcoin, was in I'd say 2019, when I was living in Argentina for a year, and as you can imagine, that kind of opens up your eyes to, well, a multitude of different scams, but mainly the scam around inflation, money printing, central banks. So that's when I really like got it. Like I was interested in it before for the technology, for the this is pretty cringe thing to say. Like I was in it for the technology, but I was initially like really just in it for the like the freedom aspect. Like this is cool. Like no one can control this. Um, there are no taxes on it. Like it's pretty rad. But then I really started understanding the like I would say more philosophical, like societal impacts it could have, and that's like when I became super passionate. That's when I really like realized this is a huge thing. Um, and I understood the infrastructure, like the ins and outs of how Bitcoin works. So it was like I got that first, and then later on I got the philosophical, societal aspects of it, and that's sort of how I got so passionate.
What do you think will be the societal change that will happen on a full, like if we zoom out like 50 years and we are kind of getting really close to like a Bitcoin standard? You can see a little bit of it like in El Salvador. But what will be the change that will happen on the world with Bitcoin as a basis, with a fundamental layer in Bitcoin?
Well, I think the most interesting part of it is, well, we're used to getting robbed at this point. We're used to prices going up much faster than our salaries go up. But a Bitcoin standard, it's basically like more and more people falling into like poverty every year. Basically, of course, governments can change the definition of poverty how much they like, but still people are getting poorer. People can afford less and less each year, and yeah, it's not really good for morale in general in the population. It really like it really starts affecting the way people look at society in general. Like people become much more depressed, much more, I would say, not hopeful about the future, because they feel like the future is going to be less than what you have now. Obviously, it's not a bad thing to live in the moment, like enjoy the moment, but people are not thinking forward because it's depressing, right? It feels like it's going to be worse tomorrow than it is today. Um, so I because ultimately, like, society is just about people, right? People form the society, and the general feeling amongst people is what creates like a prosperous society or like a not prosperous society. So I believe that one of the biggest things, like setting aside all the money things, finance questions, I think the biggest impact will be that people will be more hopeful about the future and more optimistic, and they can feel themselves progressing much more than they maybe would be now, because it's not just money is just a tool, right? So it's not like just people getting extra money or being able to buy extra stuff makes them happier, but people knowing that they have like more monetary freedom in the future than they have now, it lifts a huge weight off your shoulder. Like, I don't know if this is true, but I think someone said that the number one reason for divorce, at least in the US, is finances. Um, and that kind of tells you something about how finances links to happiness. Mm, but again, it's not about like having the money to buy like crazy stuff. It's like having the money to like be free and feel like you're progressing. That's I think the biggest. So in short, I think people will be happier, much happier on a Bitcoin standard.
I'm super excited to announce that this podcast got the first ever sponsor. 21 Bitcoin is Bitcoin only from day one, and they teach and preach self custody. This is my go to exchange when someone asks me, oh, where can I buy my Bitcoin from? This is the easiest entry for Bitcoiners. And if you want lower fees, plus at the same time support this podcast, use code Robin and click the link in the description. Yeah, it's interesting. Like you said it, like Bitcoin, in the end of the day, it's just money. But when you're like running a marathon and running on a Bitcoin standard is like you're running on a solid street, and on a Fiat standard it's like you're still running, but you're running on sand. Like you fall down so much faster. You have to run so much more to get to the same point as you would run on a normal solid street with good shoes. And in the sand you're just trying to keep up with the inflation. And like to actually keep up with inflation, you don't even you really need to step up your game every time you are doing anything like this. And with you have to get the salary basically like 50% increased every year to really keep up with the asset inflation, with house prices, with all the good stuff. I think like the CPI numbers, the inflation numbers that we have been given, they're like with 5%, 10%. This is for me all bullshit, because when you look at how much more expensive a nice house in a nice neighborhood gets, or how much more expensive the food prices in restaurants where you want to go with your friends in there because it's a nice restaurant, like all the nice things are getting more expensive and way more fast expensive than the banana. Like, of course, a banana is not getting like, oh, now it's 10 euros, now it's 50 euros. Like, I think we get there, but not as fast as the really good things. Like, it always depends when you live in, I think Seyr said it in the beginning so good. When you live in your parents' basement, only watch Netflix and live that kind of a life, you are not bothered by inflation. Like, the Netflix subscription will not be crazy in the next years, I guess. So you will keep up with inflation. But if you want anything good in life, you have to work a lot to keep up if you're working in a Fiat standard. And this will completely change society if people get the hope back that they can actually build on something solid. So I think you said it really, really good. Maybe in the terms of building something solid, like, what did motivate you to build Xellox, to being a Bitcoin entrepreneur? As I understand it, is really Bitcoin focused. Like, I saw some videos and it's all on Bitcoin focused. Like, what did motivate you to start this off, and like, how far are you? Are you still a one-man show, or how is the setup going?
No, we're multiple people. I've been with my co-founder Arturi for 2 years, and we have some engineers also working part-time with us to build a foundation. We're currently getting into a place where we really have everything mapped out, so to say, mainly regarding our hardware wallet Clavis. That's obviously a big project. We have our key store Yokis, which is at the end of the day a pretty simple product, but kind of our entry into the space. But what really got me interested in it was, first of all, I felt like I could contribute. I felt like I could bring something. I felt like there was something I could contribute with. Like, I think that's where it comes from. Like, I was thinking about like the experience of using Bitcoin, the experience of like the general wallet space. Um, and I kind of came to the conclusion that, there's the wallet is for Bitcoin like what the search engine and browser was for the internet. Like it's everything. Like, without the wallet, there is no Bitcoin. Without a search engine, a browser, there's no internet, right? It's like the cornerstone of everything. And I thought that there isn't like a wallet that, in my opinion, has cracked the code. And I felt like I could bring something different to the table, where I could basically take a swing at cracking the code. And I think, like, one thing I got focused on was that it's too, like, how would I say, segregated. Like, you have hot wallets, you have cold wallets, you have custodial, non-custodial, and I thought there has to be like some golden middle road to take, because this is very confusing for regular people, right? It's like it's basically too many options, kind of. There needs to be something that kind of brings together everything, like the best of everything, and sort of puts it into one package, right? And well, the first thing I had in mind is, well, obviously, base layer Bitcoin transactions are not going to be what people are going to be paying stuff with, right? Like, you're not going to go to the kiosk to get a coffee with a base layer transaction. So the next question was like, okay, so what is going to be the medium through which you, let's say, purchase like a regular coffee? How's that user experience going to be like? And well, there are a bunch of answers, right? It's not like there's one thing, but lightning is a great thing. in my opinion. Lightning is it's fantastic. The infrastructure is it's great. It's ingenious. Um, but the problem I see with Lightning for like everyday people is that, well, first of all, you kind of need to set up the infrastructure, right? Like you need to, well, again, you have two choices here. You can have self-custodial Lightning, or you can have like custodial Lightning. And at the end of the day, like if the Lightning is going to be custodial, then what's the difference of just having it on an exchange, right? It's just that there's really no, like, the only difference is, okay, I can move Lightning funds to like a non-custodial Lightning wallet through, but it's still like an exchange can do that. Like Relay, for example, um, has a Lightning integration. So it's kind of like a question of, okay, so Lightning works if it's custodial, right? And custodial services, like, sooner or later something bad happens. Something bad. I'm not saying everything goes to hell, like goes down, but sooner or later something bad happens. So I was thinking there has to be like a better way, like a better system of doing this. Also, Lightning transactions are cheap, but still there's a cost. Um, and also, like, separating on chain and Lightning, it's like, so I have a different app for my spending, then I have a different app for my saving, or then I have like a device for my saving. It kind of gets confusing. Like, you kind of want to bring everything together. So the infrastructure we're going for is basically, you have um, a hardware wallet which serves as your wallet, just like most people still carry a wallet around. Um, and now the first question people usually have is, why would I carry my hardware wallets on me? Like, that's stupid, right? Like, why would I carry everything with me? And the answer to that is, like, you don't carry everything in the hardware wallets. What's beautiful with Bitcoin is that you can do an HD, hierarchical deterministic wallet, where you basically, from the same seed phrase, you can generate multiple wallets, right? And you can generate a savings wallet. So the infrastructure we're going for is, you generate a savings wallet and you generate a spending wallet. And the saving wallet's private key is completely wiped off the device after you generate it. So you generate the saving private key and you generate the addresses to it, but then you wipe the saving private key. So on the hardware wallet, you just have your saving addresses. This is to avoid stuff like clipboard hacking, where, people uh, spam your clipboard with their address. Like, if you send your friend, for example, hey, this is my Bitcoin address, and someone gets in between, and you send the wrong address and they send the funds there. So that's like the point of having even your addresses in the offline environment. But then you also want like a spendings account, where you can spend from like Apple Pay, Google Pay style, like very easy, convenient. And a thing I always like wanted to do, and I never understood why it doesn't exist. Well, I do now, but I didn't understand it before. Is, why isn't there a payment service where I can send money for free anywhere in the world instantly? Well, obviously that exists with Lightning now, but it's not exactly free um, all the time, and it's a bit cumbersome to set up. But then I started in finding out about like federations, Fedimint, stuff like that, and obviously improving Bitcoin privacy is also an important thing. So we started thinking of this like um, sort of like uh, a non-profit payment network run by the Bitcoin community, like different Bitcoin associations around the world. who basically run this type of federation that's non-profit, so that there are no transaction fees whatsoever, and you can transact instantly and for free anywhere in the world. So it's very much like Fedimint, but the difference is that because hardware manufacturers obviously make their money from hardware, whereas software makers take transaction fees because software costs money to build and maintain software, so you need to take some transaction fees. But we thought, if you could have like a kind of like a global payment federation run by nonprofits that are funded by hardware manufacturers who basically donate money to them so they can run the software independently. And these are like entities the Bitcoin community selects and that are like run by Bitcoin community people, basically whoever the Bitcoin community wants to run it. That would be sort of a dream infrastructure, because it's still like the problem comes to like decentralization, right? Like obviously you want base layer Bitcoin in self custody for your savings, because there you don't want to take any counterparty risk. But the question is, like, when you want spending money, when you want money to move faster and cheaper, you're gonna need to take on some counterparty risk, right? It's like you either do it self-custodial Lightning, where your counterparty risk is your own node, which is a single point of failure, or you do custodial Lightning, where the custodian has the counterparty risk, or you do something more in the direction of what I'm proposing here, where you have like a maximally decentralized, kind of like a layer 2 solution, where you could have, for example, starting off with, like, for example, 15 Bitcoin associations around the world. We have a pretty active Bitcoin association in Finland. It's obviously non-profit grassroots movement. They run their Lightning nodes, provide Lightning payment services to businesses here in Finland. But have those type of grassroots non-profit players around the world basically run this payment layer, that they can do faster transactions.
And it's separate from the Lightning layer.
Well, yes and no. So it would kind of, I see Lightning personally as like a service provider settlement layer in the long run. Like, for example, you could have these different federations. Like if you looked at, like, for example, what Fedimint does. Fedimint, basically the system is they have their own sort of federation that has eCash, like Bitcoin eCash. It's like a multisig on the Bitcoin base layer that holds X amount of Bitcoin, and then the federation issues the same amount of eCash tokens that are transferred completely anonymously, but there's like a peg to the Bitcoin in the multisig, so they can't make any more Bitcoin. So it's transparent in that way. But then, like, for example, if one federation, you're a part of one federation and your friend is a part of another federation, you basically use different wallet providers or whatever, and you want to send money from one federation to another, then Lightning is sort of like a bridge there. So the federations have a Lightning channel open towards each other, and they can settle funds through the Lightning channel fast and for very cheap.
So then
that's kind of,
so it's more like a layer on top of Lightning, where when Lightning will be Lightning has some challenges, as you said, and I think also there will be layers above Lightning. I mean, when you look at what Relay is doing or what other exchanges are doing, this is kind of also a layer above Bitcoin, above Lightning, whatever. So I do think if we are actually at the point where we have, I don't know, 4 billion people, 5 billion people transacting with Bitcoin on a daily basis, buying their coffee with it. Like right now, we don't have so much volume. Like most Bitcoiners just hodl on, they buy, they move it to cold storage, they move it to self custody, and then they live there forever or for years. But when we come to the point where so much traffic is going on and everybody is buying and the circular economy is flowing, uh, I kind of feel like we need a lot more development on Bitcoin, and that's an amazing thing because Bitcoin is the base layer. Nobody can manipulate it, and then people can build on top of that layer, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, some applications, whatever, and everybody can do whatever they want. Like there can be so many different solutions, and in the end of the day, as in a free market, the person can choose. Oh, do I go with a custodial Lightning wallet, or do I go with my normal exchange that has a wallet integrated where I can spend it? Or maybe, I don't know, X, Twitter is also coming out with payments, I think this or next year. Maybe you can put some Bitcoin in there and transact with everyone you know on Twitter. Uh, that's all good, and there will be so much more solutions. The important thing, I think, always is that you have the option to self custody on a base layer when nobody can fuck with your savings. This is the important part, and I am not as educated as I should be on payment layers above Bitcoin. Because for me, this is something that still has to be developed. And I'm not that kind of type of developer. I'm actually a software developer. I was right now. I'm not developing anything, but I am able to do that. But I'm not that deep into that. So I kind of always hear solutions, and Fediment and what you're saying is also very interesting with having federations and like, I don't know, 50, 100 different kind of local places where they transact with it, with each other. I don't know if this would be the future or something else. Like there's so much going on, and I think the important part is to remember we are so freaking early. There will be so much coming out. There will come those killer payment apps on Bitcoin that will start as a startup in 8 years. we the founders are right now just in some school, maybe even they're like, maybe it's now 17 years old. Like it's crazy to think what will happen. Like we are not, like when you compare it to the internet, we are not even in the year 2000. The Googles, the Apples, the Facebooks, they're all coming on. Like they are just getting built, and that's an interesting thing to say. Yeah. So, but you were always laser focused on Bitcoin, right? Or did you had experience with like a shitcoin phase or like
Yeah,
some
I
other
think
phase?
I think everyone has, or at least most Bitcoiners I've talked to have had some kind of a shitcoin phase, right? My shitcoin phase wasn't really, um, it was never like a super like, yay, this token is better than Bitcoin type of phase, but it was more like, okay, like I personally don't see like what this adds on top of Bitcoin. But if some people, obviously still believe in a free market, so I'm like, if some people think this is better than Bitcoin, then they're free to do so, and I still kind of think that. But initially I thought it more from like a business perspective, like we would have more clients if we obviously branched out to shitcoins to provide support for shitcoins. Um, but then I started thinking of it more as a mission, like a moral mission. Like I don't want to associate myself with anything that has no future, right? That type of thing. Like I want to build from the beginning on something that has a future, and it's a bit contradictory because we do have plans on supporting like stable coins that are built on top of Bitcoin. Uh, but this, I think, is like I would say that this is more in favor of Bitcoin than people usually realize. Because yeah, like you said, we're still so early. Like Bitcoin is nowhere close to being a currency that you even would want to spend. Like, okay, I spent some Bitcoin last night at the Helsinki Bitcoin meetup, but that was like €7 or something for fries. But it's not like I want to spend Bitcoin to live because I want to keep my Bitcoin, right? So it's like obviously you can do spend and replace. Like, hey, I have Bitcoin, and then if I buy something for $1,000, then I just buy $1,000 worth of Bitcoin. But that's just that becomes like maybe a bit too complicated. Like, why not just when you get your money in euros or whatever, why don't just spend that money that month on living expenses and then put a part the part of it that would have been over into Bitcoin. Like it's just an unnecessary step for most people because they receive their money in fiat, and then you know it's kind of easier to just spend the part of the fiat you want to spend and put the rest into Bitcoin than to put everything into Bitcoin and then you know spend the Bitcoin and replace it at a later date. Um, and I still believe like because we're so early, there's going to be probably, like you said, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years that a large part of the population still wants dollars, still wants euros. But I think the key is to start moving towards the Bitcoin direction slowly. Like we don't even want the Bitcoin revolution to happen like this because that's not good. It Bitcoin is still technically very early. There are still technical issues to solve. Like we want it to happen gradually. We want it to happen slowly over time, where it's like instead of you, like a good metaphor. I don't know who said this. Maybe Sailor. But uh, like if you're in a sinking ship, you don't want the ship to sink like this because no one has time to get out, right? You want it to kind of sink slowly so that everyone has time to get into the lifeboats. The lifeboat in this case, obviously, is Bitcoin. You don't want it to happen too rapidly, too radically. You want it to be like a slower transition, and that's where I believe like stable coins on top of Bitcoin is a huge next step. Like start moving people towards the Bitcoin ecosystem, towards Bitcoin products, basically putting them closer to Bitcoin, lowering the barrier of people getting into Bitcoin by also moving, like taking them away from the pure fiat infrastructure like banks. So like I was talking about free instant transactions anywhere. I believe that's like a great incentive of moving people to a more Bitcoin centric financial system. Like for example, I don't know if you've heard about the Apple Vision Pro.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was buying one of them with my friend in the States. I'm gonna bring it to Finland to try out because I'm a big Apple fan. But so I was trying to send money to my friend in the States. We were a bit too late on the coordination. Just a couple hours before purchasing it, and obviously we realized, hey, I can't send money to you in the States that fast. Luckily, he had a credit card, but um, those type of things that they're just so annoying. Like people, especially our generation, younger people, they just we're used to like stuff happening fast. We want stuff to happen fast, and we don't want all this hassle, like all these barriers. Like me sending money, I need an ACH number, routing number, name, address. Like this, it's irrelevant. Like I don't want to do all that. I don't want to pay 1 or 2% per transaction to send money to my friend in the States. And I don't want it to take 2 to 5 business days. I want it to be fast, I want it to be instant, and I want it to be free. That's like the optimal case. And I can do it with Bitcoin, sure, but I can't do it with dollars. And dollars, unfortunately, Apple doesn't accept Bitcoin yet. So you kind of need the dollar side. So that's like what I think is a big next step in the coming like 5 to 10 years, 5 to 10 years, is starting to move the fiat infrastructure on Bitcoin, and then kind of letting it melt on top of Bitcoin. Like I say, Bitcoiners usually say fiat is like a melting ice cube. But now the problem is that the melting ice cube is like, okay, let's say you have 2 glasses of water. You have the traditional banking system is 1 glass, and then Bitcoin is another. Now the melting ice cube, which is fiat, is in the traditional glass here, and it's going to melt and it's going to produce water. Like that, there's still some economic value in it, and there's still some like people using it. So do we want the ice cube to melt into the traditional system, or do we want it to melt into the Bitcoin glass and like grow Bitcoin at the same time? And I think that the second option is better. You want it to sort of melt in with Bitcoin and help Bitcoin grow as well.
Yeah, I think this routing for the fiat system to collapse like in the next 2 years, this is like, I can imagine happening fast. Like I can imagine the fiat system really collapsing really fast if something happens. Like if people out of this, like there can always be a black swan, and the economics effects on that would be tremendous. The whole financial system, the whole breakdown of trust in everything. Let's make it a good bridge from fiat to Bitcoin, and I think this would be way better, because when everything breaks down really fast, it could be not a good years. I mean, Bitcoin does not care. Like it's Bitcoin will succeed in the long run, I think, even if the fiat system breaks down tomorrow, or the fiat system breaks down in 100 years. But I think a slow, peaceful revolution going on over multiple years, and this also goes back in low time preference. We also should have low time preference when it comes to adopting Bitcoin, in a sense, and that's why I also, when friends or family come up to me, oh, I don't understand this Bitcoin, I don't like it, I'm like, okay, you will be in the late majority, it's okay for me. If everybody is in the early majority, then I cannot stack so many sets. It's like we also need people adopting Bitcoin in 40 years, maybe not that late, but let's see how the timing goes. But it's okay for me. Like I stopped convincing everybody. I'm just there for everybody to get educated. I have the podcast with 5 episodes each week with interesting guests with different perspectives. I'm always open. Like everybody in my family, everybody on X can just text me, call me, whatever, and say, hey, can I learn this about Bitcoin? Let's jump on a call. Like I always do that, because I think we have a mission to educate, but I will not force anybody in Bitcoin. It's not helpful for Bitcoin, and we don't have any hectic or any stress to do so. Yeah, so we are coming slowly to the end of the podcast, and we have an interesting end routine in the podcast where the previous guest asks a question for the next guest. And your question from the previous guest is, if you had to sell half of your Bitcoin, what would you buy?
That's a tough question.
Yes. I cannot even imagine selling half my Bitcoin.
Yeah, I would probably, at this point, I would invest it back into Xellox, because that's what like I don't see myself doing anything else than advancing Bitcoin at this point. Like I don't think there's anything more interesting that I could be doing. Like I just can't, like, I don't know, once you see something so clearly, like I see Bitcoin, uh, there's not really anything else you want to do. Like that's what you, and I'm sure you feel the same way. Like
Yeah,
there's
like
once you get it, you can't let go.
if I would be forced to sell my Bitcoin, I would either buy Bitcoin miners, invest in some education, or invest in yourself in some way. Like there are different ways depending on which life stage you are, or investing in your business. Like maybe I would just like take like approach where like buy some Bitcoin miners and or buy some ads for the podcast so more people see Bitcoin education. Like there are so much things I could do with that money, but my answer will always be I will buy something in the Bitcoin ecosystem. Like something with Bitcoin, as you said, with your own business. Would be an interesting and good idea also. And then Samuel, thank you for being on, and I hope we can make a second round in some amount of time.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Robin. It's been a pleasure.